All right, we're back. It is Monday, January 25th, back at the Zach and Sully podcast. My man Sully over here, Lee Mass. How's it going, man?
How's it going, guys?
All right, so a lot to get to today. We got a lot of football shenanigans that went happen over the weekend between the Pats and the Broncos. Got Carolina and Arizona. That game was an absolute snore. Arizona did not deserve to be at that game. We're also going to be talking about how obnoxious the people on CBS are and the media overload of these games. And we're going to jump into a couple other things. One, the big news, obviously, from the NBA, the David Blatt firing. And we are also going to touch upon a couple other funny things like Dirty Grandpa Reviews, that movie that completely ruined anybody who has a Hulu account, and you probably know about this movie. And by now, you probably know how terrible it is. And we're also going to talk a little bit more about the Young Thug debacle in Columbus on Friday night, or Saturday night. My friend went to that show, Jackson, and he said it was one of the worst shows ever. So, all right, let's get right to it. So, Pats Broncos, final score was 20-18. Story of the game. The offensive line for New England just could not keep up with the Denver defense. Brady was getting mauled. He was hit 20 times in the game. 20 times. Sacked. How many times do you think he was sacked? Like what?
Only 4. Can you believe that? He was only sacked 4 times.
So you got to give a lot of credit to Brady there. I mean, he was getting rushed the entire game. And the fact that he only got sacked 4 times shows that obviously he's one of the best, making good decisions. He was 27 of 56, however, 310 yards, 2 picks, 1 touchdown record, touchdown pass. He had an 18.1 passer rating in the first half, the lowest of his career ever. Tom Brady was also the leading rusher for the Patriots with 13 yards. That killed them. Gronk obviously was one. Knee obviously didn't seem like it was bothering him. He had 8 catches, 144 yards, 1 touchdown. Peyton Manning did what he had to do. He just showed up and had a decent game. 176 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, this game looked a lot similar to when Green Bay played Denver in Week 7. They just got completely mauled by that defensive line and the linebackers from Denver, and the safeties had a great game too. So yeah, let's hear it from the Pat fan himself, Sully. What are your thoughts on the game?
If I could go down there to Foxborough right now and punch Marcus Cannon in the sternum, I would, but I'd probably miss and fall flat on my face because he can't seem to stop anything right now. I've never seen a guy look so out of place playing a professional sport. He had no business being on that football field, no business whatsoever. And, for a guy who makes $6 million a year, you've got to step it up. I don't care how good that defensive line is. I don't know.
And as a Green Bay fan and like seeing like the offensive line the way they played this year, like I felt for Patriot fans. Like they could not stop them at all. It was horrible. Like every single time that Brady was in the pocket, it was like watching your best friend like getting mauled by like a tiger. Because like it was like you saw him standing in the pocket, and then you see all of a sudden here comes big bad Von Bell running full speed. And Cannon, the thing is, I don't understand the Patriots didn't make an adjustment. I mean, I guess it's tough when you have Von Miller on one side. And did I say Von Bell before? I meant Von Miller. Getting mixed up with the Ohio State player. But when you have him on one side and you have DeMarcus Ware on the other, it's obviously very tough to stop that. And you got to give a lot of credit to Denver where it is. But man, like the Patriots, like they could not just contain that. And you're right, Cannon was just absolutely embarrassing. I haven't seen the Pats offensive line play that bad in probably ever.
You know what he looked like out there? He looked like in Madden when he toggled off from being the quarterback. You accidentally, it's 3rd and long and you need a big play and you want the computer to take over and you decide to be an offensive lineman, but you forget that. So all of a sudden they snap the ball, the computer does it automatically, you just stand there and you have no reaction time. That's what Marcus Cannon looked like out there. He was awful. And he was awful for a guy making $6 million a year. I know this offensive line has had tons of injuries. I get that. And I know that Denver has the best defense in the league right now, but I don't care. I don't care. Your quarterback is panicking for the first time. One thing, if you watch the Pats win it week in and week out, you can say about Tom Brady is that he always looks calm under pressure. He always looks cool.
He was dancing around a lot yesterday.
He had happy feet. I've never seen that out of him. I can't remember the last time I saw him panicking in the pocket. And it's like, how many steps do you want him to take when he drops back? He has no protection, none at all. He can't even get guys open. Guys don't have time to run their routes. How is he supposed to find an open receiver? And he had plenty of them. And that's another thing. When James White is your go-to guy, I'm sorry. The Pats have done it for a very long time. The only real deep threat they've ever had is Randy Moss. It maybe Deion Branch, but they've made their living off these little slot receivers, these short little white guys. And you know what? I think if you gotta go out, you gotta get someone who can catch the deep ball. You have to get a deep threat.
I was scared of that too because I keep referencing it again, but see, Green Bay's game on the offense is a lot similar to how the Patriots are. They have the slot receivers running in cuts and slants. So when I saw the way that how completely ineffective and how horrible it was for them to get that going against Denver, I knew New England was going to have trouble. Not just because I didn't have faith in Brady. Obviously, I thought the game was going to be close. I had New England 24-17 or 24-14. So I knew it was going to be somewhere around that kind of game. But yeah, you're right. The slants ended up just killing New England's offense, and it put a lot more pressure on the offensive line because the receivers and these little slant routes weren't really getting the cuts and the big yardage that they usually had this year. So, it's just it's tough, but you just got to give credit to Denver. Their defensive game plan was great, and they took advantage of an inexperienced and awful offensive line in New England.
You look at a team that doesn't have a deep threat and doesn't have a running game. Look, you need one or the other. And I know the fact that
Tom Brady was the leading rusher of that game for the Patriots. 13 yards. Steven Jackson couldn't get – that is literally 2 first downs he couldn't even get, total yardage of. He had 11 yards.
I'm not even going to blame Steven Jackson for this because I don't know where they would be if they didn't pick him up. The dude was out of shape. He played in 6 games? Probably not even that, including the playoffs.
I think.
4 games maybe? And you can't expect a player to be in prime shape to go up against the best defense in the NFL after 4 regular season games. Are you kidding me? That's how many preseason games they have. You expect him just to pick it up, be thrown into the mix. He looked heavy. I'm not saying he looked bad out there, but never mind the fact that the offensive line wasn't giving him much protection anyway. He wasn't getting any push, but he just couldn't do anything. He couldn't power through.
I got to talk about it because obviously it was the big play of the game. Gostowski, that field goal. It's funny, that little change that the NFL made last year to make this point actually a little farther, and it did evidently could have kept a team from going to the Super Bowl. And I knew I think every Patriot fan knew that kick was going to come back to haunt them later on in the game because obviously now with the Patriots driving down the field, they had all that momentum going in. And even if you do score a touchdown, now you got to go back on the field and convert the 2-pointer. And I just think that kick, and you can't even get on Gostowski for it because he probably is the best kicker in the NFL. And he had hit he had a crazy stat.
He hadn't missed since his rookie season 10 years ago. It was his first missed point after try.
And unfortunately for him, it came in the AFC Championship game against Denver. So, I mean, it sucks, but that's how the game is sometimes. You can't expect to make it all. Though I will say this, for an NFL kicker, you got to make those.
I have a problem. And look, Gostkowski cost them the game when it's boiled down to it. But honestly, if it went to overtime, I don't think the Patriots stood a chance. I don't think they stood a chance. They were playing terrible. Their offensive line couldn't block. Marcus Cannon was out in no man's land, and they weren't moving the ball upfield. With that being said, Peyton Manning didn't look like any superstar either. But C.J. Anderson,
like I said, he did enough for the Broncos to get by on offense. It was a close game. It really was. It didn't feel like a close game because the Pats offense was getting mauled by Denver, and they only scored 2 touchdowns the entire game. And I mean, Denver, they converted 2 interceptions on Brady. One of them came in the red zone, I think, too. And I think it was just a matter of holding them to field goals and keeping them out of the end zone. The Patriots having to settle for field goals and that missed extra point was really what evidently killed them in the end.
I have a problem, and people are going to tell me, "Oh, hindsight is 20/20," and I don't want to hear that because I said this as the game was unfolding. I have a problem with Bill Belichick being in the field goal range twice, not once, twice, on 4th and whatever, and not kicking a field goal. The first time, okay, I understand it. You have the best quarterback in the league. You have serious threats. 4th and 1, yeah, go for it. That play call was terrible.
It was very, very conservative. It was, but keep going. I'll answer it after this. But
that play call was terrible. There's no reason to pitch it back 5 yards. The first try was the floater attempt to Edelman. There's no reason. I don't know. Bad play calling. You weren't getting any protection. Kick a field goal. But 4th and 1, I can understand his mindset. And he said looking back, he was 100% all for it, going for it both times. Okay, I can understand that. But to not go after it when you know your offense is capable of moving down the field and scoring again, when you know you're 2 points away from tying it, even if you do score, not just one, not just point after it, you have to get 2 points. When you know that you have Gronk able to recover an onside kick, which towards the end of the game he wasn't able to do, but different scenario. It was also a terrible onside kick by Gostkowski, and I don't think he's getting any flack for that at all because people are just so fed up about the missed extra point. That's a whole other story. I'm not pinning this game on Gostkowski. You have the best quarterback in the league and maybe in the history of the league, and you can only put up 1 touchdown. That problems go way beyond the kicker in that. But you have to kick a field goal that second time around. You know that Peyton is not moving the ball downfield.
That was my argument that was going to be for the case. It's because I think he's thinking that, like, Peyton Manning really he had 2 hot starts to the game, those drives, the 2 touchdown passes to Owen Daniels. But other than that, the offense didn't really do too much for Denver. And it was primarily the defense was the one who made the statement of the game. I can understand Belichick's conservative play calling, and I'm a hypocrite for saying it too because it's like, yeah, you want to play a little conservative when your offense isn't totally clicking, but at the same time, it's like it reminded me a lot of the NFC Championship game last year when I criticized Mike McCarthy for his conservative calling against Seattle when Green Bay went out and played the Seahawks last year. I mean, you had chances to go for touchdowns on 4th and 1s and 4th and 2s, and he settled for field goals rather than punching it to a gut. And I would figure, well, they're moving the ball efficiently. Then if they have a lot of momentum, then give them a shot and let them go into the end zone. But that's the thing. Like, that's what he's going to get criticized for going after those field goals. But there's always that thought in the back of your head is, well, the way the Denver defense was playing, there could have been an interception, there could have been a fumble, there could have been something even worse. I mean, Brady was getting absolutely destroyed out there. And I think that had a lot to do with it. He was getting hit almost every single time he threw the football, whether it was a sack or whether he was just getting roughed up. So I think there's a lot of things going on in Belichick's head for the reason why he made those calls and the way he approached the game in the red zone situations.
I couldn't believe that there was only 4 sacks. I could not believe that.
Yeah, that was shocking. He got hit 20 times.
If you were to ask me how many sacks, I would have said upwards of 12. Yes, I would have been exaggerating. Absolutely. But that's what it felt like. That's what it felt like watching the football game. He was on the ground every other snap. Every other snap, he was on the ground. He was being helped up. It was awful. It was absolutely terrible.
I mean, I can't really – it always is that momentum that teams have at the end of the season where you know how they're going to play, how things are going to play out. I mean, the year the New England went undefeated in 2007, yeah, they beat the Giants in the last week. But the way they played, I think there was always a sense of we aren't really playing like we were at the beginning of the year. And now we're going into the playoffs with this chip on our shoulder now. Like, maybe we haven't been playing the last few weeks, and I feel like it's a new trend that every single time this happens to teams that don't go into the playoffs with like good momentum or finish the season shitty, then that's what ends up happening to these teams. Like you had in New England. What was New England, 3-5 or something like that in the last
2-4.
They had a losing record. It was like the worst record that Belichick's ever had at that point of the season. So there was always a doubt in my head thinking, well, what if the Patriots aren't going to be able to bring this to back another championship back to Foxborough because they haven't been played very well at the end of the year. I mean, I saw it was another good example. Was it with the Atlanta Falcons a few years ago? They went like 13-3 or 14-2, got home field advantage. Week 17, they did not look good against, I think, Carolina, and then they go in the playoffs and get mauled by Green Bay. So it's all about momentum. It really is. And some teams do it better. Arizona was the example this year, too. I mean, they sucked. They were horrible. We'll get to that later. They were horrible against Carolina because they just didn't look like they were playing well towards the end of the season. So I think that's the kind of momentum you need going into the playoffs, regardless of who's on your team. That's why those teams like the Giants of 2007 and the ones in 2012 and the Packers of 2010 who just sneak in, they have that momentum that builds on the team. So I think the Patriots are kind of a victim of that as well because of their poor playing they had at the end of the year. So anything else you want to add, though?
I could talk about this game for days. I guess what I'll end with is that.
Well, we're not gonna end it completely. We're gonna go in something a little similar, and you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I know, but I guess I'll end it with Peyton Manning really is the golden boy, as far as the media and NFL fans go, because people love him. And now there was a headline on Sporting News this morning, and it said the title was Peyton does it his way. That's like, does it his way? Yeah, he did it his way because he can't throw a fastball anymore.
He's one of the best QBs ever. They're going to give him the credit. The media is going to boost it up because, he's towards the end of his career. And obviously, there's a big portion of America that hate the Patriots just because they win. It's true. The Patriot fans have nothing to be upset and whine about. The only reason why they're upset is because they're hearing like from all those dumbasses on like social media like, ha ha, Patriots lose, you guys suck, you're not going to the Super Bowl. It's like, all right. So the only 2 years that Brady hasn't made the playoffs was his second year in the NFL, and the other one was when he tore his ACL. And the Patriots finished 11-5 that year still, and they lost the division because it was like a 3-way tie with the Jets and the Dolphins or something like that. Other than that, the Patriots have been pretty consistently a game away from the Super Bowl almost every year. They've been to 10 AFC Championship games in like 14 years or 9 or something like that. They've been 10. To six Super Bowls. They have nothing to be upset about. Anybody would dream for something like that. So, but we're going to talk about something a little similar here. So what else was going on in the game? I was really curious. What the hell is going on with the broadcasting at CBS? Like, this makes absolutely no sense to me. Phil Simms is completely clueless. The interesting one I wanted to talk about with this officiating is like the media overload and all this bull crap expert analysis stuff. I am so sick of that freaking term, expert analysis. Like, you bring a guy on the field who played the sport for like 11 or 12 years, and just because he was a good football player doesn't mean he's a good broadcaster. And no one can predict these things that happen on the field. So what I'm talking about is, that play where the Peyton Manning threw that pass and then the ball ran behind the line and then they reviewed it. Yep. They call Mike Carey into the game. Mike Carey says, well, this is not going to get overturned. It's wrong. He's been awful. He's been wrong about so much crap all year.
And he hasn't – not only has he been wrong, but he hasn't been definite. So he'll say something and he won't make a decision. He'll analyze both sides, and then the call is made and he'll say, yeah, that's what I was going for. That's probably what I would make too. It's like, all right, well, you couldn't have told us 5 minutes before? No.
Jim Nantz was the only one who got the one right. He was like, yeah, I think that one was behind the line. And Mike Carey was like, well, I don't think it was a behind the line pass. I think that it's going to stay called. And then the Hockley and the crew come out and they're like, oh, yeah, well, what do you know? It was behind the line. So he was wrong about that. Phil Simms was wrong too. He even also on that play, Phil Simms was like, well, what are they going to do? How can they overturn it? No one recovered the fumble. And Jim Nantz goes, Phil, the Patriots picked up the ball and ran it back to the other side of the end zone. He was like, oh, all right. Like, dude, like, you're getting paid how much freaking money, how much amount of money are you getting paid to sit there and just watch the game? And you're not even paying attention to the simplest crap, like this guy picking up the football. He didn't even know what the hell was going on. And then the other stupid thing with Gostowski's miss an extra point, they bring in a kicking expert analysis, Jay Feely. Like, this is such a waste of money to have these guys. There's nothing expert you can tell me about kicking a field goal. He went up to the ball, he kicked it, he missed. That's it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the media has gone so overboard nowadays. Everyone's so I don't know. There's an analysis on everything and analytics, and people bring in all these extra guests, and it's like ruining. I don't know. Back in the day, when you were a sports writer, you were a sports writer. When you were a journalist, you were a journalist. When you were a media personality, when you were a broadcaster, you were a broadcaster. Like Al Michaels, the fact that he could do the Olympics and do hockey, the fact that he could do football. He wasn't an expert on anything, but he was very good at what he did. He's still very good at what he does. We were just talking about that before the show.
Yep.
And he's a great broadcaster. He doesn't claim to be an expert on anything, but he does his prep work. He's been around a lot of different sports for a very long time. And now you don't see that crossover anymore. If you see people crossing over, it's like on SportsCenter or it's on Fox Sports 1 or it's something like that where they're not doing play-by-play or color rules. And Joe Buck, I guess, is the exception, and that's a whole other story. But I'm sick of these analysts and experts, Ray Lewis making tons of money to be on TV and give opinions like, Tom Brady and Cam Newton, they both could be MVP, but what Cam's doing, giving footballs to little kids, man, he's the MVP in my eyes. You're rambling.
Great insight, Ray. Here's $5 million for your expert analysis. Like, everybody is so idiotic that they get paid this amount of money to do this work. At least you got a guy like Adam Schefter who goes out there and, like, reports it and does actual journalistic work. But I think that those guys make more money than he does, which is so stupid. Like, dude, look at this. NFL Primetime, they have shows from, like, 10 to 1. Why do we need to talk about the games for 3 hours?
You know why? Because people tune in.
Gonna win. That's it.
People tune in and they sell commercials. That's why. That's why they do it. That's the only reason.
Man. I mean, I love football. Trust me. And I like hearing like stories about things and stuff. But man, this is ridiculous. The amount of time that they need to talk about these games, and it's going to get even worse for the Super Bowl because they have a show I think begins at 11. It goes till 6 o'clock. Are you kidding me?
But
7 hours for a pregame?
Do you know who does that format right, though? And we give them a ton of crap all the time, but they do it right. ESPN with College Game Day. And that's whether it's football or basketball. ESPN College Game Day does it great. And maybe it's because there's a lot more programs. There's 32 football teams. But in college, there's hundreds. You could do anything. You could go down to D2 and D3 if you're desperate for storylines. But they do features. They'll do stuff on, a player's injury. They'll do features on coaches. They'll do features on someone's family life. They'll do features like A.J. McCarron, helping out a locker room attendant and giving them a ride home, and talk about their friendship. That A.J. Starr kid, that was the Alabama equipment manager, and those are really intriguing, and they're good. And you can also break down a ton of different games in a million different ways. I will never turn off College Game Day, and College Game Day goes on for 3, 4, 5 hours.
College Game Day is interesting though, because they go to the campus and they talk about school and tradition stuff. Like that's cool. But College Game Day goes from 9 to 12, and you do 3 hours, you get the signs in the back. Dude, that's something to watch. Like, people will tune in to see what the signs are like. They tune in to see the campus atmosphere. They do a very good job with and there's a lot more games to cover too. So for 3 hours, that's pretty damn good. But dude, I don't want to see 6 guys. I don't want to see Ditka, Chris Carter, especially Chris Berman, him just doing that for 3 to 5 hours at a time. It's so annoying. I don't understand why these people tune into all this stuff. And did you see the Peyton Manning run on first down? They brought out a mile-per-hour meter to show, he ran this fast, pretty damn quick for Peyton. Who cares? It's so stupid to have these kind of things in the game. I'm so tired of it, man. It's just really oh man.
It's the second screen era. It's the second screen era, though. They're competing with tablets. They're competing with people adjusting their fantasy rosters. They're competing with, hey, I have other sports going on my tablet.
Because of all this crap, too.
The NFL is rubbing me the wrong way, very much so. But will I stop watching? No. Will I stop playing fantasy? No. Are they still going to get my money? Yeah. And that's that's why they do whatever they want.
And we're going to continue to talk about it because we're going to go right into our next topic. It's Carolina and Arizona. All right, so complete, absolute abomination of this game was Arizona did not even deserve to be in the same field, along probably the same sentence as the Panthers. So, yeah, Palmer, oh, my God, he had a horrible, horrible game. I had spoken the podcast last Thursday, and I had said that if he was the reason of what was going to be the outcome of the game, he fumbled twice. He threw 4 picks. He caused 6 of the Arizona's record-tying 7 turnovers in this game. Cam Newton was phenomenal. He was 19-28, 335 yards, 2 TDs. They completely wiped him off the field. This game was a snore. I think everybody in America knew once Ted Ginn got that big touchdown, the 80-yard touchdown, or was it no? 2 Ohio State guys. Ted Ginn got the first one, and Corey Brown got the second one. So those 2 Ohio State guys got the touchdowns. But I think after Corey Brown's touchdown, that game was pretty much said and done. So, you catch any of this game?
Yeah, I had it on in the background. I tried paying a lot of attention to it, but it was such a shootout really early. Carson Palmer, man, that guy's hurt. Clearly, I think there's going to be stuff coming out that it's maybe more than just his finger. But if there's one thing that I learned from yesterday, it's the importance of a fantastic offensive line. And maybe more importantly, the benefit of a fantastic defensive line. Because, I mean, we can talk for days about the Carolina defense and Luke Kuechly and how good he is. He had an interception for a touchdown yesterday. But, excuse me, both teams, whether it was the Patriots or whether it was the Cardinals, looked like Papa Warner teams out there. It looked awful.
Yeah, and what else was pretty hysterical? Well, not actually hysterical, but the game that Larry Fitzgerald had against Green Bay, he played phenomenal. He looked like an all-star best. And Larry Fitzgerald was terrible yesterday. He dropped so many balls. He just could not get it going. The entire offense of Arizona was all David Johnson. He had over 100 yards of total offense, rushing and receiving. Yeah, that game was just clearly Carolina was the best team in the NFC this year. They might be the best team in the NFL. I mean, they had the best record, 15-1. They literally probably should have been undefeated. That one game in Atlanta, I don't know how the hell the Falcons pulled that off. They should have won that game. So it looks to me that Carolina's been pretty much perfection the entire season. Cam Newton, deserving MVP, brings a lot of energy to the game. You can't I have a hard time not rooting for that guy. He's just he's a fun player to watch, and I'm definitely leaning towards Carolina in the Super Bowl. If all they have to do is put points on that Denver defense, and if they do, it's gonna be like Super Bowl 48 all over again for the Broncos, like when a massacre against Seattle, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Cam sometimes frustrates me, but he genuinely, and this is the thing I like the best about him, he looks like he's having more fun than anyone out there. I don't know if you saw there was a little bit of a scrum at the goal line yesterday. He just pops out of the pile and starts dancing in the end zone. And that stuff when he's your opponent can kind of be frustrating. I remember the Panthers played a preseason game against the Pats last season, and before the game, there's a ton of time left in warm-ups, and he stops his warm-up and goes over to the goalpost and kneels down and starts praying, head down and everything. And 10, 15 camera guys come over, and they start shooting him and holding cameras and stuff like that. And
well, the media does that, you know. I see all the cameras around Brady and Manning yesterday at the end of the game.
Yeah, Belichick pushing camera guys and sound guys out of the way.
That was funny.
But he looks like he's having fun. The whole football is the kids thing. I mean, you can't knock that. That's awesome. That really is awesome. I don't know, man. He doesn't take any painkillers. He's never touched a drop of alcohol in his life. He says he seems like a model citizen. A lot of
There's a lot of charity work for people too.
Have you seen the letters to the editor about Cam Newton that pop up in the Charlotte Observer?
No.
So people will write in and they'll just bash Cam for like no good reason. So one of it was when he announced the birth of his child. I don't know if it's a son or a daughter. People were writing in letters to the editor and saying that he should marry his longtime girlfriend because he needs to set a good example for kids. And I mean, granted, this is the South. It's North Carolina, and it's a more religious community. But
people need to shut up about this whole entire thing. Like, oh, he needs to be a role model. No, he doesn't. No one has to be a role model for anybody. It's his freaking life. He can do whatever the hell he wants with it. If he's an asshole and he's running around saying F you to all these people, then let him do that too. Why do you care? He's a football player on the team that you watch. I'm so sick at this whole entire role model thing. Like, that's not very classy of him. Oh, it's not very role model. Like, well, not everybody's a role model. Sorry to tell you.
And he's a great role model. So it's funny that they think that him having a child with his longtime girlfriend before marriage is being a bad role model. But that's a whole nother story.
It's funny. I also asked about, speaking of that game, sorry about that, but I just was talking to Jackson about it yesterday because he's a Bengal fan, and I asked him about how do Cincinnati people feel about Carson Palmer like being in the game and how he played yesterday. And he told me that the people in Cincinnati call Carson Palmer the quitter, and people have ripped off their lettering on their Carson Palmer jerseys, wrote "quitter" on the back. That was kind of funny when he told me about that. So I mean, but yeah, it looked like he practically had gave up in the game. So
yeah, one thing I do want to touch upon, Thomas Davis, the defensive back, linebacker for the Carolina Panthers. Broke his forearm yesterday. I was in the hospital, and he announced that he's still going to try and play in Super Bowl 50. Hopefully, after 2 weeks of recovery. I don't know how long it takes to recover from a broken forearm. I'm sure painkillers will have a lot to do with it if he decides to play in 2 weeks. But the dude has 3 torn ACLs in his career. 3. And I was watching the game with.
I actually did see that on Twitter this morning. Actually, that story.
I was watching the game with a couple of other sports writers up here in the Berkshires, and one of them said, I would have quit after my second one, which I can't blame him because I don't know. I mean, we know people who've suffered multiple ACL tears, and they keep going. But
that's crazy.
That is not – come back to it. To come back from it 3 times and maybe even playing it because he comes back from a broken forearm. I don't know. That's a cool storyline to pay attention to. Cam Newton one, obviously, and then Luke Kuechly helping out a fallen fan after celebrating in the end zone. Did you see that?
I did see that. I watched the whole entire debacle, so I saw everything about it.
Just a weird day in football.
Yep. So that's pretty much all we can help out with that in Arizona. I mean, Arizona going home. I mean, Carson Palmer. Last thing I'm just going to add is that he had an awful postseason. He was just absolutely terrible. Hard to watch. He should have had 5 picks last week against Green Bay. He had 4 today, so he evidently should have thrown 9 picks in 2 games. But Who knows? It might have been a different story if Sam Shields had decided to catch this ball. So Carolina and Denver going to the Super Bowl. I'm probably going to go with Carolina, but we'll get into that probably in the next week or so when we do our Super Bowl preview. So moving on. So big news, obviously, NBA, David Blatt being fired. Any idiot that tries to tell me that the players had nothing to do to it, you are completely idiotic as a person, and I don't respect your opinion anymore. There is absolutely no way that this was like influenced by LeBron James and the players. No way that they did not have anything to do with this. The Cavs are 30-12. They're in first place. They're 16-2 at home. They were just in the NBA Finals last year, and Blatt is 80-41 overall in the NBA as a head coach. And he was very successful in Europe as well. There is no other reason why this guy would get fired other than the fact that LeBron initiated it or somebody on the Cavs did. There had to have been a lot of animosity between the team. There's no way. There's no way. He influenced this. He did.
And there's someone, his camp, his group, his agent or whoever it might be has come out and said that they think that the players are directly involved and LeBron is directly involved.
Of course he is.
And LeBron clearly runs whatever he wants in the NBA. Look, first of all, did you know he's a Boston guy?
Who? Blatt?
He was born in
Boston.
Went to Framingham South High School. Yeah, he's a Boston guy. He's from the area. But not that either of us are in Boston right now, but you know. Anyway, he real successful. I mean, the Cavs are in first. One thing I thought was interesting, the poor city of Cleveland. I kind of say that, not really, but
the poor city of Cleveland. You're right.
They've gone. So Terry Francona was hired as the Cleveland Indians manager 3 years ago. In his 3 years there, the Cavs have gone through 3 coaches, and the Browns have gone through 4. So Terry Francona, just the only one owning any sort of retail or real estate, I should say, not retail, real estate, or having any sort of permanence in that city, because none of the coaches can keep their jobs out there. And the Indians haven't been good either. So Terry Francona has clearly gotten lucky.
I just had this huge thing with LeBron because this to me makes no sense. For a guy like LeBron, who does a lot of finger pointing and wants to keep putting the pressure on anybody, Blatt was the perfect guy for him in Cleveland. This guy is, if I completely screw this up and the team isn't very good, we can just blame it on David Blatt. LeBron's not going to get in trouble for this because LeBron is a diva and he wants the center of attention. He wants it LeBron's way. You can obviously tell him and Blatt aren't boys. You're not supposed to be boys with your coach. Your coach is your coach because he knows what he's talking about, and he's supposed to get the team prepared for the game. It's not that you can't hang out and take Instagram photos about all these different styles you're in and talk about how happy-go-getty your life is because your coach doesn't want to do any of this crap and stuff. I don't know. Tyronn Lue, is that the new guy that's in right now?
Yeah.
They got their asses kicked the other night against Chicago. Yeah. Came into the first game. So obviously there's no effect towards it. It's just the fact I think LeBron just didn't like him. But guess what, LeBron? Here's what I gotta ask you though. It's like the teams that are the most successful besides the LeBron era. I mean, was Eric Spoelstra a great coach? Probably not. Having LeBron there had a lot to do with the success in Miami. But still, he still it was a decent enough coach to get him back to the NBA Finals every year. But he's got this control over an organization now that is so idiotic for people I just don't understand it. Look at these successful coaches like Pat Riley, Phil Jackson, Popovich, Red Auerbach. Those guys don't take shit from anyone. Nobody. They don't take it from anybody. And they've played with some of the best players in the world, like Kobe, Shaq,
Michael Jordan,
Robert Parrish, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, all those guys. And this to me hurts LeBron in a sense on his reputation because now it's he's calling for his own coach and saying that he had nothing to do with it. If you look at it on record and all the stats that come with David Blatt so far with Cleveland, it is completely insane that he got fired. It makes absolutely no sense unless there's a guy speaking from the office that doesn't like him that plays a very important role in Cleveland, and everyone knows who that is. It's LeBron James.
What I think personally is that the Cavs should have kept Blatt. They should have had him hang out. If they lost again in the playoffs, didn't make it to the finals, even if they did make it to the finals, and they lost again, blame him then, fire him then. Free reign. That's what people were saying about Claude Julien keeping him at the start of the season. If you start off terribly, the Bruins could fire Claude and say it was the coaching staff's fault. There you go. There's your scapegoat. You have people aren't asking questions. That's why I don't understand round. But with that being said, so many problems with the Cavs, and I think Jackson, man, I'm sorry, you're going to hate me for this. They rely, man, maybe Kevin Love should stop being so soft if you want to play well, all right? Maybe how about stop blaming your coach and start holding accountability to some of your other players? That's what I think.
It is. It's completely true. You have, like Kevin Love stinks. I mean, you can tell there was a lot of animosity between him and the coach. I mean, but that's the slogan of Cleveland. The world revolves around LeBron James. And I was cringing at his interview at the end of the game. He kept on saying, we didn't play good against Chicago because coach had a game plan for us, and we're gonna have to work harder the next week because coach wants us to build endurance and strength, and we just got to work hard for coach. I'm like, dude, you are the worst. You really are. He referenced coach about 9 times in that interview, and he didn't do crap or credit Blatt for anything up until or said anything about Blatt until he got fired. And now he's talking about how, we're gonna work real hard for coach. We gotta really work harder in practice for coach. He is such a scumbag. I know for a fact he was behind it. He's the reason why Blatt got fired. And anybody who disagrees with that is idiotic. It's true.
Doc Rivers said it once best. He said, average players want to be left alone. They want to do their own thing. Good players want to be coached. And great players want to be dissected and yelled at and torn apart. And you look at someone like KG. KG is one of the greatest players in modern-day NBA history. Our generation, KG is at the top of the list. He'll get torn to shreds. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He wants people to tear him to shreds because that's how you get better. To be boys with his coach. He wants to be buddies with him. He wants to hang out with him, feel like he can joke around with him. I'm reading Don't Put Me In, Coach by Mark Titus, the former bench player for Ohio State. And he talks a lot about Thad Matta. And he talks a lot about how Thad Matta was a great guy and he had an awesome personality, and he was a real big jokester, and he wasn't afraid to to toy around with them and stuff like that. But when it came to game time, and the game, they were down by a couple points. The NIT is one example, or in practice before a big game, he was the first one to yell at players, hold people accountable. And the year after they went to the NCAA finals with Greg Oden against Florida and lost, that year the year after the team wasn't getting along, he sent them on a team building activity at the Navy, or not a Navy SEAL, the Special Forces training place out in the woods somewhere, and they did stuff like that. And good coaches do stuff. They can be friendly, like Thad Matta, tell jokes, but when it comes to crunch time, he tells players to shut up and sit down. And no one's going to tell LeBron that. No one will ever tell LeBron that.
You to have a guy who initiates and puts his players in place and stuff. When you have a coach that doesn't have full control of the team, like you had the situation in Cleveland, there's always going to be it always feels like a missing piece. All the best coaches, besides Sprolstra, other than him, you look at all the guys who have won over the years. You think how long do you think LeBron James would last under a team coached by Greg Popovich?
I think he would last fine because Pop would put him in its place, and that he'd be a great player and he would do just fine. But it would take him a decent amount of time, and now LeBron has all the star power. Like if San Antonio had drafted LeBron or ended up with him somehow, he would be fine. It'd be like Kobe and Phil Jackson, okay? You think Kobe really wanted to be coached like that? No, but he was, because Phil Jackson doesn't take crap like that, and therefore he's a great coach. Blatt kind of comes in and he wants to win a ring and stuff like that, and he wants to be successful. He kind of does. He's put in a crappy position, and there's so much power given to the stars now. You look at guys that aren't worth the money they're making, and they're loaded. Like Swaggy P getting big contracts and stuff like that. He's not that good, but that's the way the NBA. And hockey is a coach's sport, because if you can play a fantastic system, you can beat just about anyone. Baseball, a little bit in between, mostly a player's sport, but we've all seen what great managers can do, like Francona, like guys like that. You look at football, yeah, it's a quarterback sport, it's a player sport, but great coaches are held in high regard for a reason. You look at just good coaches. You look at guys who've won one Super Bowl title, like Tony Dungy. He's nominated for the Hall of Fame this year. He might be a Hall of Famer. He won a Super Bowl title, So basketball is not a sport that's dominated by coaching like the other major sports. This probably has something to do with it, but you can see.
I don't know, but I don't know. I kind of disagree with that, because Basketball, to me, I feel like if you have a guy who writes up good plays and like knows what sort of defenses to play against teams, that's smart too. But I don't really, and I agree with a lot of what you said about, especially like the other, how they have bigger impacts in other games, and especially in the NFL is very prevalent and stuff. But I just think that it's more of a respect issue, and I just don't think LeBron ever respected Blatt. But I think it's just like he like completely ran him out of town just because they didn't like him. I'm like, because they weren't buddies, and it's just mind boggling. And you're right, how much star power these guys. I mean, how much power these guys get to in the NBA today. It just makes it's disgusting. It really is. Like they like hold these guys hostage and say, well, you know what? Like if I don't get it my way, well, I'm just gonna go to free agency or I'm gonna demand a trade and I'm not gonna play.
Yeah, if the NBA wants longevity and they want to become, something up the power that the NFL has without the corruption, they need to change the way that league is run. That's what I think.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, we'll wrap that up. So we do something a little different right now. We have a bunch of things. I don't know how many things you have for final thoughts. I have like 4 things that I would love to get into really briefly on each one. Do you have anything else you want to add, or do you want me to say some things, throw some things out there, and we can talk about them? Because I got a couple things we can talk about.
Before we go on our big dirty grandpa rant, I'll just plug Macklemore and Ryan Lewis have a new song, and I know half of our audience is like, dude, shut up. And I know the dude, he gets a lot of flack. Everyone who knows me knows how big of a Macklemore fan I am. I've seen him 4 times. I've held his sneaker once with his foot in it. It was pretty cool. But the song is called White Privilege 2. If you haven't heard it yet, go take a listen to it. Real powerful message. Kind of talks about how if anyone who knows the song Awake by him, he has one line that it's like, don't even tweet RIP Trayvon Martin. Don't want to be that white dude, million man marching. And it kind of talks about the struggle to be like conscious and aware of issues that aren't your own. And it kind of talks about a guy, what it's like to be a white guy, believing in and standing up for, for people who are going through times like the Black Lives Matter movement and stuff like that, but not being a part of it and still being on the outside. So go take a listen to it. It's not a fire song. It's not thrift shop. It's not a banger. You're not going to play it at parties, but it's good music, and it's an even better message. So go take a listen. That's my 2-minute spiel.
All right, so a couple of things I just wanted to talk about last night late. If any of you guys still had any willpower to watch any television after the football games, the X-Files premiered. It was excruciating to watch. I felt that I literally felt like I was just like getting stabbed in my eye hole watching it. It was so it was so predictable, so cheesy. Already acting was terrible. What the hell has happened to cable television? I haven't watched cable television in so long. I'm a big guy on like online series, HBOs and stuff like that. Man, cable television is going down the crapper. Mulder and Scully come back, the famous the 2 duos from X-Files. Joe McHale was on. He was absolutely unbearable. I couldn't take him seriously. He's the guy from The Soup. It was sucked. It was like they just kept talking about like they just kept talking about a certain thing. They were like, oh, well, the aliens get down and the alien ship crashes. Are we here? Are we alone? And then the classic intro. Dun, 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 dun. And I'm just like, this is going to be an excruciating hour of this. And it was just so predictable and over the top.
This intro? Is it this intro?
Yeah, it's a lot similar to that one. I was thinking more of this one. So yeah, I just knew as soon as that music started playing, I was like, yeah. After that intro, I'm like, this is gonna suck. So it was just absolutely horrible. So enough of that. Just don't get upset with it. But
I think real quick before we move on to Dirty Grandpa, I think the fall of cable TV, and I mean, there's plenty of proof out there that this is the truth.
Oh, I have 2 more. Other than finish up what you're saying, I just wanted to get into 2 other things real quick before I really dive into Dirty Grandpa.
No, I just think it was that writer's strike back. I don't know. It was probably about 8 years ago now, and it was the emergence of reality TV, and people started putting all this energy into reality TV, and as a result, all the actual shows became crappy.
And so two other things I just wanted to touch on real quick. So Young Thug was in Columbus over the weekend. My friend told me it was the worst concert he has ever been to. Every one of Young Thug's opening acts were booed. There were fights between the rappers and the fans of the stage. Feel bad for the people at Newport that had to witness that disgusting, god-awful rapper. The doors opened at 7. He did not go on till 11 o'clock, and he was so intoxicated that he had to be like babysat and like assisted throughout the show. I mean, it's one thing when you're on a stage and like you're playing an instrument and you're kind of like intoxicated and like at least like you're doing certain things. It was literally like some dude just got really, really drunk and was like having a karaoke for rap songs, I bet. And so I feel so bad for any of my friends that were at that show. I wish I could get you your $48 back. Yeah, $48 to see that crap. And so quickly on that. And then the other thing, you have anything to say about that?
Well, the three openers got booed off the stage, right?
Yeah.
So it's not even like that $48 was going to other acts. It was just Young Thug, who I think is not terrible. I don't think he's good at all. But that's just my opinion.
It's just
I like Macklemore, so what do I know?
It's so funny going on Rap Genius and seeing people like interpret Young Thug's lyrics, and it's some of the most like cliche rap lyrics about getting money and girls, and they try to like write this whole philosophical like thing saying like, you know what Young Thug is talking about here is in his mind. He's relating and using it as symbolism or some garbage thing. Like, no, he's not. He's talking literally about like drugs, sex, and all this other kind of stuff. So I don't know. It's just really strange. And then the other thing was Mellisa Click, the chick from the Missouri incident, the one that was the reporter. She got charged with 3rd-degree assault today. She hasn't been fired, which is absolutely ridiculous. Telling somebody that she's going to muscle a reporter off the public protest, who, mind you, is a mass media and journalism teacher at Missouri, telling journalists that they can't do their job is completely hysterical and ridiculous to me. So I hope she gets fired. She's like exactly what is wrong with college students these days. So there's that. So yeah, let's get into Dirty Grandpa. So
have at it.
What's that?
Have at it. Dive in.
Okay, so Dirty Grandpa. The reason why we're talking about this is because it came out over the weekend. I voiced my frustration with this movie already months ago. They have had so many freaking trailers about this movie. It's been absolutely ridiculous. I have a Hulu account. I watch a lot of Hulu television shows, and it is the freaking advertisement for every break on Hulu. I was like, this movie is going to be terrible. I want it to suck, but I also have a sense I feel bad because Robert De Niro is the lead actor, and oh my God, is he running his career into the crapper. He is horrible. And like, so me and my friends the other night were reading the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and they're the funniest things I've ever read in my life. Here's one of the reviewers. Dirty Grandpa is like watching a friend's mediocre improv troupe do a extended spring break sketch, and your friend just happens to be Robert De Niro. Crude in nearly every sense of the word. Dirty Grandpa is a nasty humor and poorly made and desperately unfunny movie.
Here's one. Dirty Grandpa boasts one great thing and one great thing only. The chemistry between De Niro and Efron is much better than I was expecting it to be, and I really bought into their troubled relationship with each other. And then it goes on to say, Dirty Grandpa tries way too hard to impress its target audience and becomes a sloppily made comedy that is really not all that funny. In the end, I admired the attempt, but the execution was a little too much for my taste. Look, and I'm still going to go see this movie despite these bad reviews, partly because my grandfather himself really wants to go see it, which I think is funny.
This reviewer writes, a running gag in the movie Dirty Grandpa involves Robert De Niro sticking his thumb in Zac Efron's ass. But to use that as a metaphor for watching this poor excuse for comedy would be to actually suggest there's any kind of spark. This is horrible. Are you kidding me with this crap? Like, oh my God. Dirty Grandpa is a mean-spirited comedy almost completely devoid of laughs. The running gag in the movie is De Niro shoving his finger up Efron's ass. There it is, people. That's all you need to know about the movie. I'm done. No, I'm not going to talk about this.
I love Zac Efron.
De Niro, you were so fantastic in your career, but Jesus Christ, this is awful. So bad.
I love Zac Efron. I think he's hilarious. I think he was awesome in Neighbors. Neighbors 2 is coming out. I think it's going to be awesome too, but I don't know. We'll find out.
So, yeah. So that's all I think we're going to talk about today. Just wanted to wrap that up. So I actually, one more thing to add in with Dirty Grandpa. It hasn't been voted to the worst movie of the year so far. Norm of the North, the animated movie with the polar bear, tries to save the the Arctic and goes to the city to talk to humans. Mind you, the polar bear talks to humans about they all think he's a man in a polar bear costume, by the way. Yeah, it's that bad. And it's Rob Schneider is the voice of the polar bear.
Who is it?
Rob Schneider is the voice of the polar bear. Like in the South Park reference, Rob Schneider was a carrot. He now is a polar bear. Like, what was the other one? He was like a stapler. Like, oh, I just can't get any more worse for him. But all right, well, you have anything else to add, Sully?
Just shout out to everyone who keeps tuning into the YouTube. We've talked about the Podbean site for a while. It's up and running. Zach and Sully. That's A&D. Zach and Sully. .podbean.com. You can download it. This episode will be up very soon if you're watching live, which I don't think you are because it says we have 0 viewers right now. But really, I've been saying go download the episode and go for a walk in the elliptical with it while listening to it. Now you can actually do that. So we're hoping this will make it more convenient. I know even if you want to watch the show, you might not want to stare at our faces for 45 minutes. So now you don't have to. Once again, we just really appreciate everyone tuning in, listening to us babble. And if you have any suggestions, any ideas for guests, hopefully we're going to be having a couple on very soon. Maybe Jack Harrison, #1 overall draft pick of the Major League Soccer. I did a story with him at my other job, my real job, the one that pays me. And so we might be able to snag him for that.
Awesome.
And yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys.
And one more quick thing I just want to add real briefly. Actually, crap. All I wanted to say was like us on Facebook. Please watch the show. I've added the times at the bottom of the video, so if you don't want to sit and watch the whole podcast video, you can just click on the times under the video for a certain topic. So I'll have those labels. Follow us on Twitter at Zach and Sully. Yeah, appreciate all the support. And so we'll see you all again on Thursday. So thanks for tuning in. And do not see Dirty Grandpa.
Bye.